This is the field guide to the birds of Costa Rica. And of course, I want to illustrate by showing you the pictures of these birds, how what we were just talking about functions. And the variety of prey existing in tropical rainforest habitats is so diverse that even species that are intimately associated, like jacamars, these are different species of jacamars right here, develop different bill shapes in order to go for different size prey. So they will avoid competition among themselves. That's called intraspecific competition. Look at these other barbettes and notice the bill shapes. They will go for insects and fruit. And of course, they've evolved different kinds of bill shapes. When we look at the overwhelming number of flower species in the tropics, certainly we think of hummingbirds and how specialized they have become. Notice the white-tipped sicklebill, which evolved its beak to pollinate a heliconia flower, which has got a hookbill shape, and the only creature that is able to pollinate is the white-tipped sicklebill. But if you look at other hummingbirds, they all have different bill shapes and lengths that adjust very, very well to different flower shapes. The tubular corollas sometimes could be long or could be short, and they could fit the bills of many of these hummingbirds. Well, last is the predation hypothesis. When think of think of 4 different types of caterpillars feeding on plant matter here in the rainforest, and think of the fact that one of the 4 is extremely dominant and is taking over the other 3. If this happens without any kind of balance, probably the dominant caterpillar is going to drive the others to extinction or to become vanished from a specific area. And here is where the predator game comes into scene. Think of a bird eating, usually predators in the rainforest like birds and lizards and others are prone to attack the most commonly found animal in the forest. And these are dominant species like these dominant caterpillars. So these predators probably will go for the dominant caterpillar, reducing the population size, and of course leaving the others alone because they're not as conspicuous, and of course keeping a balance between species. So predators are extremely important in the tropical rainforest, and an imbalance of predators could cause an imbalance of species. There are other hypotheses that of course do not apply for Costa Rica, like big rivers, for instance, in the Amazon. Huge rivers like the Amazon River could be a big barrier between 2 major ecological areas. And of course that will end up creating separate populations and separate species. In Costa Rica, of course, the mountains is probably the most fundamental factor to understand diversity and how speciation occurs, how species that probably derive from a common ancestor split apart and now they live in either side of the mountains. So as you, or even the gradient, they're creatures that are so specialized and so adapted to their very tiny little world that they need very specific feeding requirements. They need very specific temperature, humidity, rainfall, and if they don't have these variables with them, of course, they will not exist. And even within the rainforest, you have variables of temperature, of humidity and moisture, even in the trunk of a tree. So if you start measuring moisture, temperature, and other variables from the base of the tree all the way to the top, you'll find differences. And of course, certain creatures in the rainforest will be more happier here in this, in the bottom side of the tree, and other species of creatures will be happier in the upper part of the tree. This complexity, of course, led to biological speciation and species richness, what we just spoke about. Major alterations to tropical habitats may have a critical impact in population dynamics, and ultimately we will be losing the tremendous diversity in the tropics. There might be other variables, and this, of course, um, could be or could make our conversation longer and more interesting, of course. But for now, I want you to look at our next video.